Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be covering a full detailed guide on how to play Jeskai Fires in Standard, along with the best of 3 sideboard breakdown. Let's jump into the deck intro. Jeskai Fires has been a top tier deck in Standard ever since Throne of Eldraine dropped. The version I'll be covering today is Pretty MTG's. He ended up going 10-1 in the Mythic Invitational Qualifier. You can follow him on Twitch at Pretty MTG, where he streams in both English and German, and Twitter by the same handle. We're going to be covering the following. Skip ahead to the section you need. The deck guide starts at the stats section if you want to skip the deck list coverage. This list has a playset of Bonecrusher Giant, 1 Brazen Borrower, a playset of Sphinx of Foresight, 2 copies of Cavalier Gales, a playset of Cavalier Flame, 3 copies of Kenrith the Returned King, a playset of Teferi Time Raveler, a playset of Fires of Invention, 2 copies of Aether Gust, 1 Mystical Dispute, and a playset of Deafening Clarion. Moving on to the lands, we're playing 27 lands, starting off with a playset of Steam Vents, Sacred Foundry, and Hallowed Fountain, 3 copies of Temple of Ephany, 2 copies of Temple of Triumph, 2 copies of Castle Vantress, 3 copies of Fabled Passage, 2 mountains, 2 islands, 1 plains. Moving on to the sideboard, we're playing a playset of Robber of the Rich, 3 copies of Legion Warboss, 3 copies of Mystical Dispute, 1 copy of Aether Gust, 2 copies of Devout Decree, 1 Disenchant, 1 Elspeth Conquers Death. Wrapping it up, here's the full 75 list. Pause the video for a screenshot if needed. The decklist import for MTGA will be in the description below, as well as a link to an infographic too. The guide. First, let's break down the deck with some stats. There's 14 mythic rares, 46 rares, 9 uncommons, 1 common. The curve of this deck is averaging 3.7. This list has 18 creatures, meaning swinging creatures will be the way you win. Breaking down the key cards. Of course, Fires of Invention is a key card given the name of the deck. Fires of Invention reads, you may cast spells only during your turn, and you can cast no more than 2 spells each turn. You may cast spells with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana cost. This will let you cast 2 multiple high cost creatures without paying mana for them, essentially for free, leaving mana open for abilities. Speaking of abilities, the next card is Cavalier of Flame. The card reads 1 red, 1 colorless mana. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste till the end of the turn. When Cavalier of Flame enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. When Cavalier of Flame dies, it deals X damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard. Overall, the Enter ability lets you toss cards in your hand that aren't useful or unnecessary lands. With Fires of Invention on the field, you'll be able to pay for the ability multiple times, so when comboed with multiple creatures, you'll be able to swing for a lot of damage to the face. Pay attention to the number of lands in your graveyard. If Red Cav dies, it could be another win condition to close the gap. Finally, Sphinx of Foresight. It reads you may reveal this card from your opening hand. If you do, scry 3 at the beginning of your upkeep. Flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. This card is a huge help on finding key pieces of upcoming turns by either guaranteeing land drops, Fires of Invention if you don't have it in hand. Additionally, the extra scry on upkeep weeds out unnecessary cards, giving you the advantage. Okay, now that we know the basics, let's talk game plan. Fires of Invention on the field, casting Cavalier of Flame or Kenrith the Returned King. Activating Kenrith or Cavalier of Flame's ability to grant our creatures haste and swinging to face. You can find more creatures by Cavalier of the Flame entering the battlefield to pitch bad cards in your hands to draw new ones, or activating Kenrith's draw ability. Here are some quick tips. If you don't have Cavalier of the Flame or Kenrith the Returned King, but a Castle Vantress on the field, use the open mana from Fires of Invention to find those cards. Draw cards with Cavalier of Gales. If you have a Fabled Passage, wait to crack it until you put the 2 cards you don't want on top, so they're shuffled back in when you search for a basic land. Turns 1 through 3 are pretty simple. If you have a Sphinx of Foresight in your opening hand, you'll want to scry the necessary cards to balance your curve. If you need more mana, keep the mana on top. If you're missing key cards, scry for that. There's not a lot of turn 2s in the main board. Generally, turn 2 you can play Stomp at face or creature, Aether Gust, or Mystical Dispute. Turn 3, generally you want to wipe their board with the Deafening Clarion, play Teferi, or just play Bonecrusher Giant. Turn 4 and onwards is when the engine really starts going. Playing Fires of Invention turn 4 and Sphinx of Foresight to maximize the scry value on your next turn, casting more than 1 creature, but really aiming for Cavalier Gales, Kenrith the Returned King, or Cavalier of Flame. Overall, you'll win with either Kenrith the Return King or Cavalier Flame on the board, and granting your creatures haste. Generally, having unavoidable flying damage or trample from Kenrith. Sealing the deal is also having the ability to kill or control their blockers. Sideboard plans. We're gonna go over Bant Midrange, Rakdos Sacrifice, Temur Reclamation, Mono Red Aggro, Temur Clover, Azorius Control, and the Mirror. I would say these 6 decks are the metagame decks in Standard at the moment. Let's jump into it. Bant Midrange. Coming in, a playset of Robber the Rich, 3 copies of Legion Warboss, 3 copies of Mystical Dispute, 1 Elspeth Conquers Death, 1 Aether Gust. Coming out, 2 copies of Cavalier of Gales, 1 Cavalier of Flame, 1 Fires of Invention, a playset of Bonecrusher Giant, a playset of Deafening Clarion. In this matchup, we need to be faster than their ramp. We do that by adding aggro creatures like Robber of the Rich and Legion Warboss. Denying their ramp are key cards like Nissa, who shakes the world with Mystical Dispute, Elspeth Conquers Death, and Aether Gust. Bonecrusher Giant here is a pretty dead card since it doesn't kill any of their creatures. It is a bad blocker to Nissa's animated lands. Deafening Clarion in theory seems good because it kills their 3/3s, but generally it feels too late and also kills our aggro creatures, finally taking out the higher cost cards to fit in our control cards. Rakdos Sacrifice. Coming in, 2 copies of Devout Decree, 1 Elspeth Conquers Death. Coming out, 1 Brazen Borrower, 1 Teferi Time Raveler, 1 Mystical Dispute. Adding more removal with Devout Decree for any of their creatures. Devout Decree could also get rid of their Cauldron Familiar if the opponent leaves it vulnerable with no sack outlet, getting rid of the Cat of In combo. Elspeth Conquers Death is a great answer to Mayhem Devil, Midnight Reaper, or Woe Strider. Brazen Borrower is not very good in this matchup since it could just die to an easy Mayhem Devil ping. Mystical Dispute is coming out since there's no blue cards. Temur Reclamation. Coming in, a playset of Robber the Rich, 3 copies of Legion Warboss, 3 copies of Mystical Dispute, 1 copy of Aether Gust, 1 Disenchant. Coming out, 2 copies of Cavalier of Gales, 1 Cavalier of Flame, 1 Fires of Invention, playset of Bonecrusher Giant, playset of Deafening Clarion. We're adding in the early aggro with Robber the Rich and Legion Warboss. It's good in this matchup since they won't have a lot of interaction till later in the game. Adding in Mystical Disputes and Aether Gust to deny the explosion, Disenchant to destroy the Wilderness Reclamation. Deafening Clarion is bad here since they won't have many creatures and kills our aggro creatures. Bonecrusher Giant comes out for the better aggro cards. High cost cards come out for better interactions with their key cards. Mono Red Aggro. Coming in, 2 copies of Devout Decree, 1 copy of Aether Gust. Coming out, 1 Brazen Borrower, 1 Cavalier of Flame, 1 Mystical Dispute. We're playing this matchup very similar to Rakdos Sacrifice. Devout Decree gets rid of their Annex Hardened of the Forge without creating 1/1s. Aether Gust is a good answer to Torbran, Thane of Red Vel, or Emperor Cleave to put them behind a turn. We're taking out Cavalier of Flame since it's a high cost card, Mystical Dispute since there's no blue. Depending on the version of Red Deck wins, Brazen Borrower or Fires of Invention comes out. I like Brazen Borrower personally since we have a lot of removal anyways, and Fires of Invention generally gives us the edge faster. Temur Clover. Coming in, 1 Disenchant, 3 copies of Mystical Dispute, 1 Aether Gust. Coming out, 1 Brazen Borrower, 1 Cavalier of Flame, 1 Teferi Time Raveler, 2 copies of Deafening Clarion. I personally think the Temur Clover matchup is hard once they have Lucky Clover on the field. We're sideboarding Disenchant to deal with that. Teferi can always bounce it for the time being. Mystical Dispute can counter their Brazen Borrower, or more importantly, Veil Wishes or the Adventure Cost granted. Killing their Edgewall Endkeeper with Bonecrusher Giant or Deafening Clarion since it kills the 1/1. The Lovestruck Beast is an excellent blocker for us since it kills Kenrith or Red Cav, so most of the time I'm winning by swinging with creatures in the air. Pay attention to the lands in the graveyard to pressure more damage with Cavalier of Flame since its dying ability can close out the game. Azorius Control. Coming in, a playset of Robber of the Rich, 3 copies of Legion Warboss, 3 copies of Mystical Dispute, 1 Elspeth Conquers Death. Coming out, 2 copies of Bonecrusher Giant, 2 copies of Cavalier of Gales, 1 Fires of Invention, 2 copies of Aether Gust, a playset of Deafening Clarion. We're adding in the early game aggro, since most of the time they won't have a lot of answers till later. Putting down a Teferi Time Raveler first gives you the edge since their counters won't be available, and Mystical Dispute is a good answer to their counters. Dream Trawler and Teferi Time Raveler, but a dead card if you have Fires of Invention on the field. So analyze your turn to see if it's better to hold up a counter or play Fires. Elspeth Conquers Death is a good target. Overall, getting rid of permanents that have exiled your creatures like Banishing Light, creatures that provide a lot of value like Archon of the Sun's Grace, or their copy of Elspeth Conquers Death, so denying the 3rd value of the saga. Cavalier of Gales comes out because of Narset Parter of the Veil. Aether Gust and Deafening Clarion is a dead card. Fires of Invention copy for counters, and Bonecrusher Giant since we have better mana cost creature. Jeskai fires on the play. Coming in, a playset of Robber of the Rich, 3 copies of Legion War Boss, 3 copies of Mystical Dispute, 1 Aether Gust, 1 Elspeth Conquers Death. Coming out, a playset of Bonecrusher Giant, 2 copies of Cavalier of Gales, 1 Fire's Invention, 1 Cavalier Flame, a playset of Deafening Clarion. We change our playstyle depending on the result of the last game. On the play, meaning you go first games 2 or 3, we add our aggro creatures in, taking out Bonecrusher Giants since there won't be many targets for Stomp, adding in counters and deny like Mystical Dispute and Aether Gust and Elspeth Conquers Death to get rid of their key cards like Fires of Invention, Kenrith, or Cavalier of Flame. We're taking out our high cost cards to be proactive to their high cost cards. Deafening Clarion is bad here, not killing anything. Jeskai fires on the draw. Coming in, 3 copies of Legion War Boss, 1 Mystical Dispute, 2 copies of Aether Gust, 1 Elspeth Conquers Death. Coming out, 2 copies of Cavalier of Gales, 1 Cavalier Flame, 1 Brazen Bar, 4 copies of Deafening Clarion. On the draw, meaning you'll go seconds games 2 or 3, we're not going to be running Robber of the Rich since we have more cards in hand when we attack. So we add another Aether Gust to respond to Cavalier Flame or Fires of Invention, giving them a wasted turn and giving us the edge. Once again, Deafening Clarion is a dead card. Elspeth Conquers Death to get rid of their key cards. Bonecrusher Giant Stomp is good for their aggro creatures and is an excellent blocker as well. Here's a cheat sheet. Pause the video for a screenshot if needed. There's also a link in the description for an image too. Other deck options. Metas evolve and you might be lacking some wild cards. Here are some other solid ideas for this deck. Omen of the Sea. We don't have a lot of 2-drops and this helps draw more cards and scry into our curve better. Tide Taker. This is a great card against control. Their counters will cost more, also good against Temur Reclamation, pretty much forces them to play their instants during the main phase or makes them inefficient. Heliod's Intervention. This is a good card with any deck that's running artifacts or enchantments that really give power to the deck. Rakdos Sacked, Temur Clover, Jeskai Fires, plus helps with health against aggro decks. Dream Trawler. Another great creature that fits in the deck. It's a bomb card overall, and once it gets going, it draws you more answers. Now let's jump into some gameplay of 3 games I played. I got to play against Mono Red in 1, Bant Ramp in 1, and Sultai Ramp and lost.
it's hot. 'Cause in another week it will be not. Get it while it's hot. 'Cause in another week it will be not. 'Cause in another week it will be not.
That's hot.
Hot.
Hot damn.
That's hot.
Niggas in another week it will be not. It's hot. Niggas in another week it will be not. It's hot. Niggas in another week it will be not. 'Cause in another week it will be not. 'Cause in another week it will be not. It was hot, hot, hot. It was hot, 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 hot. It was hot, 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 hot. It was hot, it was hot, it was hot.
That's hot.
Switch it up.
Get it while it's hot. 'Cause in another week it will be not. Get it while it's hot. 'Cause in another week it will be not. Get it while it's hot. 'Cause in another week it will be not. 'Cause in another week it will be not. Get it while it's hot. 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 Get it while it's hot.
Get it while it's hot. Cause in another week it will be not.
Hi again, thanks for watching this video. My name is Brianna Lee Tan, or BLT for short. I wish you the best of luck with this deck on the ladder. The next deck I'll be covering is Rakdos Sack, aiming for sometime next week. If you want to see more content like this video, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment for the next guide idea. Bye! I personally stream on Twitch Tuesdays through Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time. Come hang out and chat, watch some more Magic gameplay, and if you're interested in more context of my plays and learning meta decks, twitch.tv.BriannaLeeTan. I would love to see you all there. We also have a Discord where you can talk Magic, gaming, or memes with the community. If you like me in general, I have a Twitter where I post on life and gaming updates. Don't forget to follow PrettyMTG for high-level Magic gameplay too on Twitch and Twitter. All the links are in the description below, along with deck infographics. Good luck winning and climbing the ladder to Mythic this season. It's 2 damage that goes through. That's... Oh my god, that was perfect! I had no idea!